Today's guest is Alicia Gladue, a football player, coach, advocate, and proud member of Fort McKay First Nation. Alicia's story with football started in a way that feels almost meant to be. She was around the game, helping with photos and social media when she was asked to put the camera down, put the pads on, and play. And from there, football became more than a sport. She went on to become a captain with the Fort McKay Northern Spirits, part of one of the most meaningful girls' football pathways in the country, and a player who has won gold with Team Alberta, competed in women's tackle football, and continued to grow as a linebacker, leader, and builder. But what makes Alicia's story so powerful is that she's never separated football from who she is. Her culture is at the heart of everything she does, her community is never far behind, and she carries advocacy, representation, and purpose into every space she steps into. And this year, Alicia took another major step in her football journey as part of the CFL Women in Football program with the BC Lions, where she had the opportunity to learn inside a professional football environment and continue building her path as a coach. She's also continuing to compete at a high level, representing Team Alberta this year at the Women's National Championship, where I'll have the privilege of sharing the field with her. This conversation is about football, but is also about mentorship, community, Indigenous excellence, and what happens when the next generation doesn't just wait for a path. Alicia, welcome to Blitz and Bloom.
Oh my god, that was an introduction. Holy smokes, I feel so emotional. Um, I appreciate that. That felt very powerful. And I'm excited to be here.
You're so welcome. You're making me tear up a little bit as well.
Uh,
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. I've been listening to your podcast and I'm like, oh, I wonder if I'll be on it one day. So it's kind of cool that I am.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to have you. I mean, when I moved into the second season and changed gears with all the CFL players going into season, I really decided I wanted to focus on the builders and the roots of football and the people who are really trying to move things forward, which relates so much to the CFL, but just relates to the sport as a whole. So, very excited to have you and excited to really expose the world to your story because I think it's a very unique perspective. And with that being said, I want to start off with your origin story. Take me back to your first involvement with football. How did you go from photography to the field, and what did that initial experience feel like?
So before football started, I just want to say like I was a little res kid. I was becoming a product of my environment. I was smoking and drinking at a very young age. And it started with a bet. So when I was in grade 8, there's a youth center in Mackay, and we were playing grounders or something at the park, and my friend lit up a smoke, and I was having some puffs. Um, yeah, I was taking some puffs of the smoke, and Dylan Elias, who was a mentor at the youth center, was like, "You shouldn't be smoking." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, whatever, like, who cares?" And later on that day, we went back to the youth, and we were playing a game of pool. And he asked me, "What is it gonna take for you to quit smoking?" As every kid, who doesn't love money? So I was like, "I want, like, money. Let's bet money." He's like, "Okay, I'll bet you $100 if you go 1 month without smoking." And I was like, "Okay," but bet, shook on it. 2 days later, came back to the center. "Oh, hey, how's the bet going?" Totally forgot I smoked that night. So I was like, "I forgot, like, can we restart?" He was like, "Yes, since, like, you're being honest." And I ended up going a month without smoking, and I remember telling him, like, I want that stack. So he came to the school with an envelope of $5 bills equaling up to $100, to get the biggest stack that he could, and that was fall of 2018. So he coached a team in Fort McMurray called the Fort McMurray Ravens, and he asked me to be the social media slash, like, photographer for the team. I think he knew, like, he seen a little bit of a light in me, but also he could trust me and my honesty just from the previous bet. And I said yes. So just there, I was just posting scores and, posting stuff on social media, taking pictures, helping like with decals and setting up rooms and whatever. From that, I think this gave me a little bit of a spark of realizing what, dedication can do because I never missed a practice. I never missed a game. And I was the only person on the team that didn't. And at the end of the year, I got, like, the dedication award, and when they were telling, like or explaining, like, "This person has, haven't missed the practice, has been here, uh, positive and ready to work and whatever," I'm, like, looking around trying to you try to guess who it is, and then they called my name, I was so surprised, and I was like, "I'm not even a player, but I think they seen it in me." So that happened, and then in 2019, early, like, I think it's February, we had an Indigenous football camp, with all the communities around Fort McMurray, and a lot of the kids from our reserve, my reserve, Fort McKay, really enjoyed it, and they were like, "We should start a football team." So then they did. So that summer, Dylan, would grab, like, a blank sheet of paper, with, a football jersey, and was like, "Okay, design a jersey," and gave it to all the kids. We put, like, a bunch of names in a hat, like, trying to figure out what we want, and it was between the Fort McKay Northern Lights and Spirit Senders. And then they're like, What about the Fort McKay Northern Spirits?" And anyway, so us youth created that team, and the same as I had the same role before, he asked me to do the same thing with the spirits. So I was like, "Yeah, for sure." And we ended up going down to Edmonton for our first game, and coming from a reserve, very limited to who we can choose to be on our team, and, people are getting injured, people are getting tired, people are getting frustrated, so, like, they're dropping like flies, and I think it was almost 2nd quarter or almost the second half, it was almost halftime. Dale was like, "We need you to go on." And I'm, like, there recording, I'm like, "What?" Like, "Hell no." And he was like, "We need you to go on, like, suck it up, like, we need you." I'm like, "Hell no." I'm getting overwhelmed, I start crying, I'm so scared, I'm like, "I can't do this. I don't even know I don't know how football works, like, how do you know how to spell football?" Anyways, one of my friends got frustrated and left the locker room, um, because he was done. He was like, he was pissed off. And I was like, "If you go back on, then I'll go on with you." And he said, "Okay." So I suited up, knowing nothing, went on the field. I asked my friend, "What do I do?" She said, "Tackle the person with the ball." And, like, 2 plays later, that's what I did. I was, like, just, like they went to, like, the left side, and then I was on the right side. I'm, like, just chilling there, like, kinda, like, jogging, like, not really sure what to do, and they came back. They cut back to my side, and I got the tackle. Um, and since then, I loved it. Since then, I was like, "Oh, this feels good," and I ended up that season being team MVP and, defense MVP.
Huge transition from behind the camera
Yeah.
to on the field, and, like, for your first tackle to be on a cutback play, that's very linebacker of you.
Yeah, for sure.
You spoke about in that moment how your initial reaction was absolutely not, and
Mhm.
the fear and the overwhelm, and obviously having Dylan there to, I guess you could say, kinda call you out and be like, "You got this, you can do this," and challenge you on the emotions that you were feeling. Had you not chosen to be brave in that moment and take that risk, how do you think your life would be different right now without that moment?
Gosh, it's it's honestly hard to imagine. I definitely don't think I would be as happy and as, like, successful as I am now. So, yeah, football changed my life. It gave me something to work towards, and like I said before that, I was smoking, drinking. Even when we would have practices and I was, like, the social media person, I would come to practice high. I remember coming to practice on my birthday high, and Dale was like, "You gotta get out of here." And I'm, like, laughing, like, "So, you're gonna give me some munchies, like, for my birthday?" Anyway, so, um, I think definitely it'd have been harder for me to, find myself and stay out of trouble. Football, that initial season, um, every weekend I'm gone, every day at practice, so definitely kept me out of trouble and I guess pushed me in ways I've never been pushed in my life. Um, Physically and, like, as mentally, emotionally, I learned so much from a leadership perspective. I I don't know, it's hard to say. I definitely don't think I would be where I am anywhere close. Gotten to meet you, the opportunities I've had, places I got to see. Yeah, it's hard to say.
Having gone through something so, I guess you could say, transformative like that, how much do you now value your ability to be in uncomfortable situations or be scared and still choose to do it anyways?
I often ask people this question, what makes you feel the most alive? And mine now is overcoming fears. That first step, that was like just, getting the ball rolling. If I wasn't able to do that, I think it would have been super hard for me to move to Calgary. Um, and that was also huge, like a monumental um, part in my life. Is yeah, scary. I don't want to do it. I feel uncomfortable, but I know I'm gonna do it. I know I'm gonna feel good after. I know I'm gonna feel proud after. I know it's gonna make me stronger. So, um, it's probably one of my favorite things about myself.
Growing up as a kid and being a young adult right now in today's society, do you think across the board sometimes we're too quick to lean into comfort versus challenging that discomfort sometimes?
I definitely think so. I think society nowadays is super soft and trigger warning this and trigger warning that, which I understand sometimes, but I think people don't really try to dig deep and figure out, okay, why is it triggering me? Stepping into that, um, which I think would make a society stronger and more, I guess, self aware, which I think makes honestly the world better. So yeah, 100%. I think we have been soft, and I've been soft sometimes, honestly. Um, but I can also check myself and be like, "Okay, Alicia, like, stop whining about this. Like, let's get to work."
Yeah. There's really, I think, a time and place for everything. And I mean, Dylan's a great example. In that situation, he could have chosen two different ways to handle that. He could have looked at your fear and decided this is too much for her. I'm not going to push her, forget about it. But instead, he chose to look at your fear and push you through that and
Mm.
create the Alicia we see here in front of us.
And I can tell you anytime I'm comfortable, he checks me and puts me right in my place, and I'm like, "Okay, you're right." So there's definitely been a lot of that, but it's also been very good. And annoying at times, but forever grateful for it.
Lots of eye rolls, but also lots of follow through.
Yeah. I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, okay," and then I'll do it. For sure.
So you became a captain with the Northern Spirits pretty early on, and you were well known for being the team's leader for years and arguably still are in some capacities. What did that experience that young give you as a leader?
It gave me, I think, overall, like, 1, confidence, within myself, but also strength and bravery. Like, I'd have to step up in situations that are not always comfortable, that are not always easy, and that's off the field also, dealing with racism and stuff like that, but I learned a lot from that, and obviously, there are tough situations, and it was shitty things to do and be in, but I learned from it, and that's what I think is most important. I also think now when I coach and also play that you're not just a football player, like, you know what I mean? Get caught in, like, this identity, "Oh, I'm a football player," and then once that's gone, okay, who are you? So, making sure that people I coach, and players who I play with, being like, "Okay, what do you like outside of the sport?" Or even with their career, "What do you do outside of being, like, a doctor or, police," or whatever it is. So, I think reminding that definitely as a leader is huge because it's football is right now, but you have a whole life to live ahead of you, and pushing them internally to see who they are is a big thing.
That was a topic that I talked a lot about with the players who I interviewed last season and, who they are outside of football and their journey to establishing all of that. And it's talked about a lot in the professional space, but I think it's just as important to recognize and explore in a youth space and in, high school and as a young adult because you're just as likely to get caught up in a certain sport or a certain opportunity and experience being who you are fundamentally. And I think
Mhm.
you did a really great job of speaking to that and kind of bringing attention to something that can have an impact bigger than I think we expect it to.
It definitely had an impact on me, and like you said, with the spirits, you know, I don't wanna say like I was, like, leading, like, like the most tackles, whatever, whatever, but, I was definitely praised a lot, and I played well, and a lot of my self-worth depended on how I played, so when I came to the women's league, not getting as much tackles, not getting, the sack or this or that, definitely made me look inside and be like, "Okay, I'm more than my tackles, I'm more than my stats, you know what I mean? I'm worth more than that. So, I definitely that's why I also praise it, especially within this league, because my sister's just coming up into this league, and she's like, "I don't think I'm gonna play as like, I'm not gonna be as strong, or I'm not gonna be like this," and we're pretty short. We're short kids. Like, that's fine. You know what I mean? You're a teammate, you do your job, and that's the best you can do, and that's all that matters.
Absolutely. And I think really having the opportunity to lead that generation, having been through it yourself gives so much
Mhm,
value. I think a lot of the times we have a larger gap between the coach and the players, but I think especially looking at the Northern Spirits, there's just this dynamic of having people from all levels of life and all spaces of life to really give more and be able to communicate more.
mhm.
One thing that stands out in your story is that football never seems to separate from culture or purpose. It all kind of travels together. You've used the red handprint to draw attention to murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, and you have done that in athletic spaces. Why was it important to you that football be one of the places where you made that statement so visible?
I think everyone can relate to sports and specifically, like, for us, and you usually see, like, the breast cancer awareness, and then with the riot, they do, ovarian cancer, so it gives, like, them a space. Same thing with us, like, this is, um, a spotlight we can represent and advocate for the stuff going on in our communities, and especially Indigenous communities. They're pretty, like, brushed under the rug, and a lot of people don't realize this situations and the stuff that we have been through and still go through. So it's super important, but it also gives me strength, gives me purpose, when on the field and in life, honestly.
I remember those photos and they're so powerful. And like you mentioned, it brings a like a relativity. Like people can relate to it because they see, oh, football, and that draws them in. And then they're like, oh, what's this about? And it just opens
Mhm,
that gate to people becoming aware and educating themselves and learning more and things not being able to be, as you said, like swept under the rug and kind of pushed aside and ignored. It's much more full frontal, it's out there and it's obvious.
and it starts those conversations, like, I've had lots of people be like, "What is that? What does that mean?" Or friends, like boyfriends or friends of friends being like, "Oh, what is that?" And that's planting the seed. That's the whole point. That's the whole point, to create these conversations.
Picture's worth a thousand words. And I think the Northern Spirits as a whole do such a great job. And Dylan does such a great job at really pushing a lot of that out. And another big thing, a ritual that the Northern Spirits have always been well known for is integrating smudging circles into game day, which the first time I saw that, all I could think is this is so historic. Like,
Mhm,
when have we ever seen this? And I'm sure it's happened in some places, but when have we seen a smudging circle come directly to sports in a non specifically Indigenous event? And it's
mhm.
become since a consistent ritual in the girls' football space with you guys. What does that ceremony do for you before competition?
I think before competition, I'm very much I get nervous before every single game. And it kinda helps me bring back bring me back down to earth and rebalance myself. And sometimes, like, just a prayer, like, "Okay, like, help me play good today, keep everyone safe. Thank you for giving me this opportunity." So, like, I'll pray to the creator, and I'll smudge my head so I can think good things, and my body so I can feel good things, my ears and my eyes so I can hear and see good things. Um, so honestly, just bring me back down to earth and more present. Okay, I'm about to ball out, you know what I mean? And I guess leave not necessarily leave my body, but be more present in my mind.
Have you ever experienced pushback or awkwardness or misunderstanding around smudging in sports?
Yes, I have. I've smudged with I think, like, obviously, I know games are scheduled for a specific time, but sometimes we'll smudge and we're cutting it close, and I remember I brought it to Team Alberta in under 18 whenever I played, and we were smudging, and I forgot what they said we were doing. They said that we were, like, doing a Canada or I forgot what they said, like, some of the announcers didn't know what we were doing, and then we're cutting it close anyways, and I'm, like, smudging, and you're not supposed to, like, rush it. Um, and I remember the coaches I'm not gonna say who, but one of the coaches was like, "Okay, hurry up, we need to go to the" I'm like Like, you can't s like, just I understand, but, just, let's focus right now and not, rush it because these are people, like, helping them rebalance, and if someone's barking at them, like, it's, um, hard. And when I usually smudge with teams, if I smudge with other teams, I'll be like, "You don't have to do this." Like, that's totally fine. If I think people will be like, "Oh, because of my religion, I can't do that," which is understandable, I guess. I wouldn't say too much hate, like, they're, like, standoffish, I guess. And smudging in locker rooms we've done, and we've got, like not hate on that, but, like, s can't smudge, like, "That's bad, set up the fire alarms." I've never smudged and set up a fire alarm in my life, like, it's not I'm not not having a campfire in here, It's different. But that's about it, nothing, like, too bad.
It's super interesting because in football, especially in the States, religion is so deeply ingrained into the sport. So I
100%.
think there's even more power in bringing a different, like, I guess you could say, an alternative religion, an alternative belief, an alternative process. And, it's so deeply accepted in football from like a Christianity side of things that it's interesting to really kind of think of how everything integrates together. Going back to culture and where you come from and integrating that all into sport, have you ever felt pressure to separate being an athlete from being fully Indigenous? Or has your journey been about refusing that separation?
I've never felt like I had to refuse it, I definitely felt, a little more isolated. I remember when I was younger and playing for Team Alberta, I was the only Indigenous person, and this was the first team I played on that wasn't all Indigenous people. Like, I played on all Indigenous and been in communities, whatever. So, I felt very isolated, and I felt a little bit more hesitant of sharing my culture and, smudging with the team. I'm super grateful that I have such supportive teammates who wanted to learn. So, I wouldn't say refuse, but definitely hesitant, um, of my culture. And usually, the stereotypes are like, "Oh, we're so" they always say, like, merciless, like, savage. I know people who've played football or sports, and they've kinda pushed away the aggression because they didn't wanna be seen as, like, the savage and, like, whatever whatever the situation is, whatever, they call 'em. It's really shitty. Yeah, I've never felt the separation between being Indigenous and, sports. I think that's within me, and I do enjoy sharing my culture and educating people, but sometimes, I do feel a little bit scared of what people might say or think, or not be interested, not open to learning, but I bring it with me everywhere and proudly. I love to educate. Sometimes people, are supposed to ask questions, but also I'm supposed to be the one helping educate and teach people. That's how we're gonna learn.
It sounds a little bit like you're pretty confident in how you show up in those spaces, but you definitely have felt like you had to or felt pressured to kind of alter how exactly you're showing up, just
Mhm.
considering how you're going to be perceived.
Yeah, definitely that.
What do non Indigenous football spaces still need to understand about respect, ceremony, and what cultural safety actually looks like?
Gosh, I haven't really thought about that question, but that's good. I think having a space for everyone to feel safe with who they are and, what they look like and who they like is super important. Just like they do, um, a land acknowledgement, we are in Canada, this is a part of who we are as people. So I think, like, having space for that and be willing to learn. I do know, like, yeah, sports is different, and I've been on teams where it's like, "Okay, like, we don't have time for that." But I think it's important to make time for that. It's not important to you, but it's important to me, and sometimes, like, that's me smudging alone, before the game, out the locker room, uh, and sometimes it's harder than others, but I think it's important to continue to bring that and not let, people change that or make me feel ashamed or, um, like, that's not important, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So you've been leading in a lot of these spaces as a player, but early on, you were also starting to teach. Not long after becoming a football athlete, you also stepped into coaching roles, giving back to the Indigenous community, starting as a mentor coach with the National Indigenous Girls Program, and most
Mhm.
recently returning to Fort McKay to fully integrate yourself into the Northern Spirits football season. Did your transition to coaching feel natural?
In a sense, yes, because I feel like I've been leading a leader on my team for my whole life, honestly. Um, so it felt kinda natural, but also I'm very bad at explaining stuff, so having to learn the difference between, like, coaching and playing either through repetition and doing. So when I'm there on the field, I can see my D-line in front of me, my DBs beside me. It's a lot easier than, like, coaching and integrating that, especially with the BC Lions. That was my biggest struggle, was learning all the plays, and 12 man is totally different from 6 man, and I do play 12 man. Like I said, when I do it, my D-line's in front of me, my DBs are there, I can see where they're dropping. So now I'm put from, like, an outside perspective to watch everyone do it, um, is harder, that's for sure, but that's also, like, me finding ways that help me learn better.
What part of coaching came naturally to you, and what parts forced you to grow and learn?
Ooh, I think wanting the kids to do better and seeing people do better came naturally. I always wanna see people succeed. Even if they're my enemy, it's still awesome. So I think that came easily, especially with Indigenous teams, creating those relationships and those jokes, being very, like, interpersonal with the players rather than just, like, "I'm here and you're there." And for unnatural, that was harder. I think being more, organizational, like, taking more time, like, I have to learn this as a coach to make you better rather than just myself, so I have to be less selfish with it, because yeah, like I said, like, everybody learns differently, so some people can learn by doing, some people learn by seeing, some people learn by hearing, um, so taking that all into consideration, um, was definitely different, but it was good, it was needed.
Do you find now going back as a player after having the opportunity to coach a significant amount, do you find that you look at the game a little bit differently?
Definitely, and I just played a game on Saturday, so I'm pretty bruised up and everything, but after coming from BC, I think I felt just it was just football, 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 football there, that I was pretty chill before the game, and I just felt confident in myself and with my knowledge, um, so definitely, I've definitely learned a lot, and I struggled with being the hammer and not the nail. I was like I wouldn't drive my feet, you know what I mean? And with the girls' league, I was bigger than a lot of the girls, so it was like I just use I guess my body weight instead of, using my power and drive. So in the women's league, being the hammer, not the nail was something I told myself all the time, which is harder to do. And then coaching this season with the girls, that was something I said every day, "Be the hammer, not the nail. Drive, 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 drive." So my first game back, like, it clicked. Like, it just came naturally because that's all I've been saying, which is cool, and I enjoy that, so I think I gotta speak, more out loud to myself with those reminders of how I can be better.
Yeah, I can relate to that a lot in the sense that sometimes when you explain something to someone else and you're saying it out loud and then you hear yourself say it and you're just, oh, that's what like that light bulb goes
Mhm,
off and it's been so long that you've been trying to adjust and adapt and do it and then it just takes explaining it to one person one time or even then saying something back to you and it just clicks differently.
mhm. Definitely different with like, I wanna be the best as a player and, like, as a person and coach, so they can be the best, so that definitely drives you differently too.
So we've talked about it a little bit, but this year your coaching path reached a very different level, a very exciting
Mhm.
level, a pro camp, a CFL room, a whole new language and pace, and an environment very familiar to me. This spring, you were the BC Lions coaching participant in the CFL Women in Football program. You were in Kamloops with the team throughout training camp, working with the linebackers coach, Mark Washington, and defensive coordinator, Mike Benavides. What did a normal day look like for you?
So, waking up at, like, 7 AM, going to get breakfast, which is the same every single day, and then going to a meeting in the morning just to go through what we're doing for the day. Um, and then team meeting, then lunch, then a practice. Sometimes we'll have 2 practices, then dinner, then another meeting until, like, 9:30 PM, and then going home and either, trying to learn the plays or, like, just getting ready to go to bed or something like that. Pretty much was every single day.
The nice part is at least it's consistent, so you know
Yeah,
what to expect every day. Very important question about training camp. What was your favorite meal?
definitely not breakfast. Definitely not breakfast, that's for sure. I think I liked we had the stir fry, which was really good, or there were these meatballs that was it marinara sauce? I don't know, but those are really good. Those are really good. And the ice cream, the chocolate ice cream, oh, I had to limit myself, but that was so good.
The ice cream is a problem, just having ice cream there for you every night.
Yeah.
Although sometimes the limiting factor is how cold it is and you can't scoop it out. So you're,
Yeah,
nah, I'm
yeah,
just going to skip
yeah,
today.
for sure.
Now, going back to football, when you were around Mark Washington, what stood out about how he teaches linebackers, not just what he knows, but how he communicates it?
Man, he was an awesome coach. I think he actually cares, and he looked from more of a, person perspective rather than just a football player. How do you learn better? And he would print out, booklets, and all the plays and everything if needed, for the players who learned like that. Like, obviously helping them learn the playbook better, but also mentally becoming stronger, especially before the game. We went over, like, just we had a meeting and it was just, like, working on the mental aspect of things. Um, so I think that was something different that I'm gonna take with my players in the future for sure.
Yeah, lots of great learning in that room for sure.
Mhm.
What did being around Mike Benevides' defense operation teach you about the difference between coaching at the community level and the defensive structure at the pro level?
I was expecting a lot going into it, but I wasn't expecting, like, that much. I am very much like I can be soft when I need to be, but also I'm like, "Okay, like, if you make a mistake, let's do that shit again. Like, let's make sure we do it right and not just give up." So I'm not saying I'm a hard ass, but I can definitely be. So from that aspect, I kinda enjoyed that. There's definitely a lot, and like I said earlier, I need to know my shit so I can help them, be better and know their shit, which it was just a lot more shit I need to learn. Like, the playbook was crazy. I can tell you the formations, I can tell you the fronts and everything. Comes to coverages, after, like, the second install, I couldn't help you there, like, it was a lot. Definitely, as a linebacker, you're not dropping the coverages like that much, um, so I never really paid attention to it, so it was definitely different and a lot more on the plate from that aspect.
Yeah, I would agree with that, that the coverage piece was the biggest challenge to learn and pick up on, which was ultimately why I went with the DBs my last year with the Lions, because I decided if I'm going to learn and really dive into something specific, that's where there's the most opportunity to learn because
Mhm.
I played linebacker, I played D line. I didn't pay attention to what was happening behind me. So
Exactly.
yeah, I just thought they did the same thing all the time, but that's not the case. Was there a moment during camp where you thought or you learned or you saw something and in your mind you were like, "Okay, this is my new standard now."
I think at the beginning of camp, I was very hesitant. I was, like, scared, wasn't confident within myself, and when we were working with the linebackers, I would say something, and I would, like, think about, I wouldn't say it, and then the coach would say it, and I'm like, "I should trust myself more," and that first week, I felt like I wasn't being the best version of myself. I'm like, "If I left right now, would I be proud of what I've done?" And the answer was no. So, I think using that reflection whenever I'm doing work, would I be proud if I left right now? Would I be happy? Am I being the best version of myself? So, I think having that, like, standard, being like, "Okay, I gotta up it up a notch and work harder and do better." Not necessarily a football, but, like, that perspective of, like, "Okay, am I being the best? Am I trying my hardest?" And if the answer is no, then you know what to do.
What is your most memorable experience from the program at training camp?
I think, um, during practices, when we would do warm-ups and stuff, they would play music on the intercom, and we're the linebackers, and we're just, like, getting ready, um, and Through the Grapevine by Marvin Gaye came on, and my favorite movie is Remember the Titans, or one of my favorite movies is Remember the Titans, and I felt like I was in the movie, like, the old '60s, like, music with football, and everyone's, like, dancing, and we were all laughing, like, that probably was my, um
Warm-ups are a vibe, and it really sets the energy and the standard for practice. It's such a great environment. So, we talked about you a lot as a coach and the path that you're trying to build in the game as a coach, but one of the things I personally love, but also don't love sometimes about women's football is that our stories are rarely linear. We don't go from being a player to a coach to a mentor. We kind of do all of those things at once. So you can be coaching, building, mentoring, learning in a CFL room, and then still showing up as an athlete. And that's something that you're doing right now. You're continuing to compete. And this year you're representing Team Alberta at the Women's National Championship, running it back from your U18 days, which is an extra special opportunity because I get to share the field with you, which is so crazy and so exciting. So before we move forward, I want to give space to Alicia, the athlete. What does football look like for you right now as a player? And what are you hoping to accomplish in this chapter? That's very exciting. And it's coming up soon. I think they just put out an announcement that there's going to be things rolling in 27, 28. And I think it looks like, sounds like the next big world competition will be in 2029. Hmm. It is. It is a long way, but exciting that, nationals happening this year, finally after 10 years, which gives such a big platform for you to, yeah, crazy. But lots of opportunity there to play against the rest of the country and, put your name out there. So I think it's going to do wonderful things for you and working towards that goal. What has it been like balancing your development as an athlete with coaching and the leadership spaces you're stepping into? Yeah, that would certainly smooth things out for you a little bit. Give you some more time. We've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about where football started for you, what it meant to grow through Fort McKay Northern Spirits, the role your culture and community have played in your journey, your advocacy, your move into coaching, your experience with the CFL Women in Football program, and the way you're still choosing to show up as an athlete. And for someone so young, you've already lived a lot of football life. So, before we get into fast fire, I want to pull back and look at the bigger picture. When you think about your football journey so far, What are the three memories or experiences that have shaped you the most or are simply the most memorable? And why those three? I'll let you have the fourth. Those are all great experiences, and I'm so glad that you've had the opportunity to experience those things, and like you said, you're still a young buck, like, you've experienced more in your football career, than most people will experience in a lifetime. So which is just phenomenal, but now we may have transitioned into season 2 of Blitz and Bloom, but our slightly unhinged fast fire question segment has remained. We're going to go quick back to back questions, and we're looking for your first answer in one sentence or less. No justification, no explanation. Are you ready? Favorite post game meal? One thing people learn very quickly once they become your teammate. One pregame habit or reset that you swear by. What is your game day alter ego's name? What is the most dramatic thing you have ever thought after missing a tackle? What part of leadership still scares you? One coach's phrase that still lives in your head. Your favorite BC Lions player. The most dramatic BC Lions player. Who is the funniest BC Lions player? What is one thing people assume about you that is dead wrong? What is one thing that you're done shrinking to make other people feel comfortable with? What is one thing football revealed about you that you were not ready to look at? What is one thing that has no business making you as mad as it does? One lesson from Fort Mackay that you carry everywhere. What does the word builder mean to you? One thing younger Alicia would think is impossible about your life right now. Okay, after all that chaos, which actually wasn't super chaotic, you handled that like a champ. I want to bring us back to the heart of the conversation. We've talked about football, we've talked about playing, coaching, leadership, and all the ridiculous things that come with loving this game. But underneath all of that, this conversation also has to be about possibility. What becomes possible when Indigenous girls and women are seen, supported, and given real pathways in football? So, when people finish this episode, what do you hope they understand more clearly about you, about football, or about where this game can go for Indigenous girls and women? Alicia, thank you so much for coming on Blitz and Bloom. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. I am so excited to take the field with you. For those people who don't already know or understand the level that this is operating at is Alicia was part of the girls program that I had a part of in starting in Edmonton and was one of the OGs. So the opportunity to take the field with her alongside another group of girls that also were a part of that program is a monumental step, I think, in this football program in Alberta, in Canada, across the board. So I cannot wait. D line, linebacker,